Join me for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Do a roll call, please. I did get a call from Supervisor Anita Johnson and Supervisor Dennis Elverman. They'll be excused for tonight's meeting. At this time, I'd like to introduce our Judge Mary Wagner to introduce our guest for the evening.
John Velker was appointed the Director of State Courts in Wisconsin in June of 2003. He's been employed by the Wisconsin court system since 1992. Prior to his employment in the court system, he worked for the Wisconsin Legislative Audit Bureau. In 2001, Mr. Velko received a Meritorious Service Award from the Wisconsin Sheriffs and Deputies Association. In 2001, he was also selected as a Toll Fellow by the Council of State Governments, which recognizes emerging leaders in state government. John is a member of the Conference of State Court Administrators. He recently completed a 3-year term on that board of directors. He currently serves on the Government Affairs and Court Statistics Committee for that organization. Mr. Velker is a member of the Wisconsin Statewide Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. He has a degree from the University of Wisconsin in Oshkosh, and in 2008, UW Oshkosh honored him with the Distinguished Alumni Award. He is a very good friend of the court system across the state and of the judges and the people that work in them. And I'm just very pleased to have John here to talk to you tonight, so thank you.
Thank you, Judge. I can tell you a couple of things about Kenosha. One thing you already know, we have one of the more energetic judges in the state. If you know Mary, she's always running on high octane, and you really got to love that about her and the court system here. And before I get started, I'm going to talk a little bit about counties being partners with the state in running the court system. And my theme tonight will be, I think you're carrying too heavy of a load to run the state court system. But I'll get into that in a minute. But I think if you just stand here in Kenosha, you can get a good sense of that. If you look across the street, I had the opportunity to go through the courthouse before we came. Beautiful courthouse. All the facilities that a judge and the judges in this county need to do their work. And your consideration of that and the consideration of the judges' issues as they run the court system, I can't tell you how much I appreciate from the state level. We don't have that cooperation in every county. I wish we did. Kenosha shows the way in that regard. And because of that, the citizens of Kenosha get a great justice system. I think that's a great lead-in to what I'm going to talk to you about today. The court system is at kind of this breaking point on how we fund it. Not many people understand, including the judges around this state, which I am learning, how we fund our state court system. And you have a handout, which, go back. It has a little chart, looks like this. All right? What I realized during the last biennial budget session is a lot of people don't understand how we fund our system, and until they understand how we fund our system, will they really be able to advocate for the best way to advocate and run our court system. What you have in front of you with the 4 arrows is a simplified version of how we do fund the system. And for years, for many, many years, this system has done a great job of making sure that we have adequate resources to run the system. Unfortunately, we are at a point, I've been in the court system, as Judge Wagner has indicated, since 1992. Each of the legs each of the sources that provides revenue to run the court system right now has got weaknesses. And I can tell you for the first time in my career, we're at that position. So what I want to do tonight, and I'm doing this around the state, talk to a variety of county boards, judges groups, lawyers groups, any group that's willing to listen about court funding. It's not on the top 10 of things people want to hear about, but let me tell you, it should be on the top 10 things that's important to local communities. The ABA just completed a task force called the Preservation of the Justice System. They had public hearings across the country to find out the effects of underfunding a court system. And they came up with 3 things that it really affects. Has an adverse effect on public safety, has an adverse effect on the people in the community that need protection, and has an adverse effect on the economy. And I don't know of a community in this state that doesn't want a good economy, public safety, and the ability to protect the people that need protection in their communities. If you don't have that, you don't have much of a community. So there are high stakes to this issue. But let me tell you how we do it in Wisconsin, and let me tell you why we have some problems. You have the chart in front of you, and this is really where our revenues come from in order to run the system. The first column, the first arrow on the far left, you can see is state tax dollars. That's the first place we get money from to run the court system. In that top box, you see 0.85%. That means less than a penny for every state tax dollar collected actually goes to fund the state court system. Less than a penny goes to fund the system. And that less than a penny actually funds all those boxes you see below that arrow. The Supreme Court, the Justices, Court of Appeals, my office, the Wisconsin State Law Library. Those next 3 are important to you as county board supervisors. The Circuit Court Support Payment, which is a payment we make to counties to assist in the operation of the system. Interpreter reimbursement or assistance back to the counties to help pay for interpreters used in the system. Guardian ad litem, money back to the counties to pay for guardian ad litem expenses. And then the other 2, circuit judges' salaries, fringe benefits, travel, court reporter salaries, fringe benefits, and travel. So let's talk about that leg of the stool. I call it the 3-legged stool. The first leg is state tax dollars, the second leg is the 2 boxes in the middle, and the third leg is county tax dollars on the far right. But let me talk about the first box and why we have problems. In the last biennial budget, we were asked to lapse $17 million out of our budget. They have asked us to do it again in this biennial budget. In order to meet the lapse in the last biennial budget, we didn't have any other option but to cut the county payments by 10%. So you actually got less money from us to run the system because of the cut in the state tax dollars. This biennial budget, that $17 million has continued, and we're continuing to do the $10 million or 10% lapse on the payments to you. So again, you're getting less money. And let me tell you why that happens. It happens because if you look at that column, there's really only 2 things in that column. People, the justices, judges, people in my office, and the payments we make back to you. Only 3% of that column is supplies and services. Why? Because we rely on our good partners in the counties to do that. That's where all the supplies and services are being used to run the system. So when we have a big cut like we've been asked to do the last biennial budgets, we have to take it from people or the payments. And when I look at people, 70% of the people in that column are people I can't cut. Judges and their court reporters. So now I'm managing a big cut of state tax dollars for my budget, and I got 30% of the people to take it from or the county payments. That's all that's left. My office has run over a 15% vacancy rate over the last year and trying to deal with the people part of that. We're suffering in that regard, but we're making a good effort, but the rest is coming from the counties. You're shouldering more of the problem. Now, let me show you a graph why you should be exceptionally frustrated with that. If you look at this graph, you don't have it, so don't look through your papers. It's just part of the PowerPoint. If you look at this, you can see there's 3 lines. The top line is green. That's the revenue that comes from a surcharge that's called the Circuit Court Support Surcharge. That surcharge was created back in 1993 in order to help us give more money back to the counties by paying you this circuit court support payment and the guardian ad litem payment. You see at the beginning where the revenue from the green line is somewhat keeping pace with the red line? So the red and the blue lines are the money we're paying back to you. Do you see what's happened after 1997, 98? The state kept raising the revenue, or the surcharge, but we never gave any more money back to you. They've never raised our appropriation. The appropriation that we have to give aid back to the counties is exactly the same, or has not went up since 1999. I have a feeling you've had some inflation in Kenosha County since 1999 in expenses. The worst part about that is, every time they raise the surcharge, they put the money in their back pocket, the state general fund. So not only have we been keeping you steady, we decided to cut you in 2009, the appropriation was cut, and on top of that, we've reduced you 10% because of my lack of flexibility in that column. So the first leg of how we fund the system is weakening. There are states around this country that are a lot worse shape than we are. New Hampshire, 2 years ago, suspended all civil jury trials in their courts to save money. I don't want to be part of a court system that has to do that. So unless we start dealing with each of the weaknesses in these legs, I think we're going to be facing some of those difficult circumstances. All right, enough about the state. Our next leg are those two boxes in the middle. Is the fee revenue. The fee revenue that we charge when we get filing fees. There's surcharges added to the end of convictions, right? There's a variety of fees and surcharges that happen when you come to the court system. Now, you'd think a lot of that money goes to fund the court system. You would be wrong. You would be wrong. Of all the money that's collected between those two middle boxes of the fee revenue, you as a county only keeps 24%. So every dollar you collect in your court systems across the street, you keep a quarter, you send 75 cents to the state. I get 6 cents to run CCAP, which runs your court system, all the computers across the street. The rest goes to the general fund. So not only is the money that was being collected in the system diverted, which is somewhat of a problem because we're losing out on revenue to help fund the system. Whoops. But here's what's happening to the revenue. That's just an example. That's the revenue, total revenue we get to fund CCAP in this state since 2006. People aren't paying surcharges and fees anymore. You know why? 1977, we had 0 surcharges added onto a ticket. Today, there's 35 possible surcharges to add. If you look at where the money goes, this top pie chart shows you where the money goes. $30 forfeiture for speeding. I'm sure nobody here speeds, but if you did and got picked up 10 miles over the limit, your $30 fine would turn into $175.30. The difference between 30 and $175.30 is all the surcharges, where that money goes. So you can see CCAP gets 6%, the clerk's office gets 4%, county jail gets 6%. The big thing is state general fund is getting 46%. As these numbers go up, and we're adding more and more DNA at arrest, we just added $250 surcharge. People coming through the system don't necessarily have the amount of money that is tacked on once they get convicted. And if you've watched NPR or listened to NPR in the last 2 weeks, there was a whole series of what folks are ending up in jail just for not paying fines. So, our second leg, fee revenue. Number one, of all the fees collected, 24% stays in the counties. You can use that as you wish, basically. I get 6% to totally fund CCAP. I have no other money to fund CCAP. So if that money keeps going down, I'm going to give you less support in the county courthouse across the street to run the computer system. I don't have any other choice. I always find it interesting, one of the questions we get when it comes to collection of revenues is the clerk of court working hard enough to collect the money? And what we know is clerks work very hard, and the fact that we have the tax intercept program at the state to intercept tax refunds to help pay for that assists in that. But really, if I'm running a business, how much money would I put in to collection resources when I'm only getting a quarter for every dollar I'm collecting? You can't even break even for that. So if you're actually looking for a way to bring in more money, you would actually be bringing more money in to give to the state general fund. All right, so we have a weakness in the second leg. Less money, and the money we do get doesn't fund the system. Funds a variety of other things. I'm sure all good things, but when we're facing the types of cuts we are at the court system, we really have to take a second look at that. All right, and then the last leg is county tax dollars. This is the one you know the most about, right? So remember the 0.85%? The less than a penny for every state tax dollar collected goes to fund the system. If you had to make a guess, of every dollar county tax dollar collected, what do you think goes to fund the court system? 9 cents. So the state goes for less than a penny, and you're almost to a dime. And in essence, that is why our court systems are still working. The counties across the state have been exceptional partners. Exceptional partners. And that's the reason the court systems are still operating as well as they are across the state. And because of this diversified funding structure, not unlike your investments, over the years we've done great. When one has gone down, the other has gone up, we've been able to deal with this. States that are all state funded in their court system, 2008 hit, and 2008 cut the legs out from states, thus New Hampshire cutting civil jury trials for a year. So we've been lucky that way, but we are to a point where all these things are now converging. So what's the weakness on the county tax dollar leg? It's you've run out of flexibility, right? You have a levy cap. You got new constructions, you can raise the levy, right? That doesn't go up that much. I gave this presentation to the Rock County Criminal Justice Coordinating Council. County administrator stood up after and said, let me put this in perspective for Rock County. Right, we had 1.4% new construction, equal about $400,000 more we might be able to levy. The 1% raise we gave to county employees would cost $900,000. We're in the hole $500,000. And by the way, the state's going to cut your payments for the courts again. So you have run out of flexibility, and we keep putting pressure on you. So these things are coming together. For the first time since I've been in the court system, these things are coming together. And for the first time, I have to be out and advocating hard for people to understand this. Because what I learned during the last biennial budget discussion when they put us through the $17 million cut, gratefully reduced to $12 million, which is still greatly too much for us to take, is I learned when people don't understand how we fund the system, it's hard to advocate for changing the way we fund our system. So that's why I'm here today. That's why I'm making the rounds to other county boards. I've already, without my prompting, and I'm thankful for this, another great example how counties are great partners, is I've already got 2 county board resolutions in 2 different counties supporting the fact that $11.8 million cut to the courts is too much, and it will affect county operations on how we run the courts. Another great example of how the counties have been great partners. But I need you guys to understand this, not so much for this current, where we are now with this current lapse situation. We are trying to make cuts the best we can. We've got 10% cuts to the counties. We are not going to make our cut of $11.8 million. At some point in the next 3 months, the Supreme Court will have a very hard administrative decision to make. 1, use our sum sufficient budget and tell the legislature the cut was just too hard. We tried, we did a variety of things, the counties got cut, we had vacancies, in the end we couldn't make it. As a result, we're going to spend the money anyhow, whatever we're short, which at this point I'm looking at somewhere around $3 million. The other option, I told you, if I don't have any more people to cut, the counties. So that extra $3 or whatever $1 million I'm going to be short, if the court doesn't want to use some sufficient, your 2015 January payment from me on the circuit court support payment would be reduced by whatever I'm short. Not you just in Kenosha, spread across everywhere, but yet another cut. So that's where we are with this current lapse. Going forward, my goal is to make the rounds between now and when the next biennial budget is being discussed, from February, when it's introduced by the governor, so when they pass it, hopefully by June 30th, is that we can advocate that we cannot continue to do double-digit lapse requirements on the state court part of this funding structure. In fact, in my great vision of where I'd like to be, and I call this my 1% tour for this reason, if we could change that 0.85% to 1%, I could infuse $29 million more into that column, and with $29 million more, I could start picking up costs that counties have, like jury costs, expert witness costs, fully funding your interpreter costs, which we are not doing now. With that extra 1%, I could take all those things off the county levy. So I call it my 1% tour, maybe a little grandiose, as I have been told. I'll start small. 2015-17, if you just don't give me any lapse, that would be great. That would infuse $12 million more back into our system. The last 3 biennial budget requests I have made, I have asked for more money for the counties in the Circuit Court Support Payment Program. Every time I am rebuffed. We are going to ask again. So between no lapse and maybe a better way of giving money back to the counties in the next biennial budget, I hope the state can be a better partner to the courts as you have been to this point. So I think I've used up my time. I know we wanted to use a little time for questions.
Yes, sir.
So I will open up the floor to questions that you may have on this.
Thank you for coming. I was just kind of curious if we could get a copy of your PowerPoint,
Absolutely.
preferably before you leave if it's possible.
I think Teresa has got that PowerPoint somewhere that we can, Avi, if it's on your computer right there, we'll be able to get it to you pretty quick.
Anything else, Supervisor Hall?
No, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Balfour?
So your solution is to go after the state tax dollars? I mean, is that what you're advising? What's from your perspective?
My perspective is, whenever I see weaknesses in different places, I'd like to address all of them. Obviously, I think the political will to change the levy cap is not there, so that means I have the 2 other legs to work with, right? I need to infuse more money into the state leg of the system, because quite honestly, the counties have went from about funding just over 50% of the circuit court operations in any one county to 63.5%. So we have to start reducing that burden. And where you start there is by increasing state tax dollars. I do think we have to start looking at that revenue or the fee revenue portion of that part of the leg. Either there's got to be money that can be used from that revenue that can come back to either the counties or the state to better fund the system, or we have to do better in figuring out if there's surcharges that shouldn't be there because people can't afford it. But we have to do a better job so we don't continue to see those revenues decline combined with the money being diverted. So maybe we can get money, more of the money that's been diverted, or we can think of ways that we can increase those revenues. Probably both, but starting with the state funding is the least we can do from my perspective from the state level. And I should say, Dave Callender from the Counties Association, lobbyist, has been fantastic. He's in my office multiple times during the last biennial budget process, telling me what he was hearing rumored in the hallways, what our chances were of getting our money back, who he talked to, what he was hearing. Just as the counties have been great partners locally, WCA has been really a joy to work with in Madison to help the cause and getting more money back to you.
Supervisor Roles.
Mr. Pokar, do you have a couple of resolutions that you could leave with us to study and consider?
I don't know if I can leave them with you, but I can get them to you very quickly. I have them in my office. I could get them to the judge or Teresa to get them to you within a day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Seeing no more lights, I'd like to thank the director for coming in and giving his presentation, and for Judge Wagner for the introduction and being here with us tonight. Thank you for all the information, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Supervisor, we'll take a 5-minute break before we start the meeting tonight, please.